Well, no, it isn't. And if we weren't low level, we were usually above 1,500 feet, which is small arms range or safety height. So the small arms aren't going to do much to you. But when you're close to the ground, and the field of view in the jungle is not very good unless you're really close. And when we did our tactical approaches, we approached quite fast and with a rapid change in speed and direction and altitude. And you're in before, and if they're not right at the edge of the jungle, where they're exposed to M60s and SAS people with some serious bloody weaponry, you're really going to spoil their aim. So with the insertion and extractions, aircraft got hit, and but I don't think we ever lost someone as a direct result of enemy action, although we did lose Corporal David Fisher doing a suspended hot extraction, and he fell from one of the ropes en route. And the SAS did take casualties in the jungle, but I don't think, when 9 Squadron was supporting them, I don't think we ever lost anyone in that 5.5 years. And to do that, you've got to have a lot of luck, but you better have a lot more than luck. But I think that towards the end, particularly from about March, April onwards, with the Yanks pulling out, it was time for us to go. I don't know that, but I suspect the regular forces were moving down, regular NVA were moving in, and we would have come up against a much sterner challenge. The Americans at that stage, I mean, they're really good, and you're just amazed about how they operate. It is a big outfit, and what they do very well. But from what I observed flying with the 45th medevac versus in combat with a fight going on, the American aircrew the Army aircrew were undertrained by our standards, but when you're that big, and they perhaps could afford it, we couldn't. We're too small to emulate what they did. And their serviceability and usability of the aircraft wasn't as good as what we had, but then again, we were paying them to supply us with it. And if you went into a fight, pull out the wounded and dead, in the middle of a fight, to me, as an Air Force pilot, looking at what was going on, there was a fight going on 200 metres up the fire trail, but there didn't seem to be a lot of urgency behind that immediate fight. Whereas just going with a routine resupply mission to an Australian battalion in the field, it was the radio calls were very slick. They were obviously on the job, very clipped, very professional, not much talk. And when you landed, the backload was ready, and you didn't see anybody except the people doing the loading and unloading. And occasionally you caught a glimpse of someone else, but that someone else was obviously defending a perimeter, where that wasn't the case with the Yanks. And often, I had to get out one stage with the US crewmen and help load the bodies and the wounded, whereas that wouldn't have happened. You didn't want to get out of the aircraft at that stage. But going in and doing a routine delivery, it was pretty obvious they were on the JOB, and they didn't like to use helicopters as much as the Americans because it broke tactical security, and they would try and minimise their need for resupply. And that's the reason the SAS survived, because the Army the regular battalions were so good, and they were good. When the Viet Cong or whoever came up against an SAS patrol, they had so much firepower they weren't sure whether those 4 or 5 blokes were part of a a regular battalion or whether they were just an SAS patrol. They kept on probing, and the SAS kept on hit, withdraw until we pulled them out. So yeah, it was a remarkable team to be part of, and yep, there were some times you wish you didn't have, but overall, I'm glad I went. Well, there was a US cruiser off the coast, and he was doing naval gunfire support, and myself and another bloke got tasked to take a US Marine forward observer up, and we were pouring huge naval gunfire rounds into the Long Highs, and the Long Highs that was bear country. When we went into the Long Highs, we ended up getting a bloody nose, and so I just locked the throttle, and we were just flying around in figure eights and circles, while the Marine with the radio on the back's directing the naval gunfire. So it looked like they were firing 44-gallon drums of high explosive into the Long Highs, and it's granite riddled with caves. And we're getting towards the end of our fuel. You could get 2 hours out of a Huey, and I'd got 2 hours, but it was time to start going home. And the gunfire was over, and the Marine said, "Can we go and have a look?" And I looked at the crew, and everybody sort of rolled their eyes and said, "Is it really important?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we've got to go and do it." And I said, "Okay." And we went, told the crewmen, get ready to fire in defence to destroy there. And we did a big descending, curving, accelerating, decelerating run past the target area, and it lit up like the side of the hill lit up. They were pretty angry with us. I asked the Marine if he wanted to go back for a second look. He said, "No, we've seen enough, thanks." So we went back to Nui Dat. But I think at first he thought, we were a bit gun shy, which we were. But he agreed with it. And then the next time, I don't know whether it was the same cruiser or not, but it was a similar time frame. One of the rounds went off inside the gun turret on the cruiser, and so Ken Phillips, Kenny in the crowd, and I had to go out and bring in wounded and bodies on a cruiser that wasn't designed for helicopters, and particularly not a Huey with skids. And we both had a big night the night before. We're sitting on the deck. You had to keep flying because the aircraft would move. While we're waiting for them to get the thing ready, we're both looking a bit green around the gills, starting to get a bit airsick. Anyway, they loaded us up, and we got them back to the hospital of Vung Tau.